Thanks, Adam. That was good. So hi, everyone. This is definitely a little funny and different, not seeing anybody's faces, but here I am in Bikini Bottom, aka this virtual space we're creating here together just to share some stuff. So yeah, today's workshop, I'm just going to be kind of talking through some of the systems that have worked specifically for me as a fellow creator, where sometimes things just don't work as perhaps as like binarily or like as structured as like some of those self-help books out there will tell you. My dad is an instructor also at a university, so there have been many moments in my life where he would try and help me and I would be like, oh, like this system doesn't work. So basically what I'm going to be doing is kind of attempting to just summarize some of the key things that have helped me along my journey and hope that it can be of use to you too. And it's kind of funny, before I get started, I actually found this little pamphlet from a course that I took with Derek Liddington, which he's actually created some content for some of those resources that are available to people about how to sort of put together your resume or things like that on OCAD. So I would suggest that you check it out. But yeah, this happened a couple of years ago and I was like, wow, we were already in on looking at how to facilitate, sustain, create, and manage your unique, healthy, creative lifestyle before this workshop even happened. So without further ado, I'm just gonna get started. I'm gonna get my little timer here. And I'm gonna share my screen so that we can just stay on track here. Okay. Just a moment here. Oh, it seems like we're having a little bit of trouble. It's okay. You know what? We'll just keep going here. Maybe I can get that going later. But anyway, so we'll start with an introduction. Basically, I'm Kinzi. I grew up in Cairo, Egypt, and my dad is from the Greater Toronto area originally, but my mother is Egyptian. So during high school, we shifted from attending school as a family from like an in-person international school to online. If you heard about the Arab Spring, if that happened or is relevant to you at all, you will already know. But in 2011, Egypt experienced a revolution, and that was kind of incentive on my family's end to sort of shift schooling online where it could be a little bit less disrupted. So I have a bit of an experience of doing online high school already, and then I came to Toronto to sort of get in touch with the Canadian side of the family and also attend university, and basically hit burnout 2 years ago, which can recommend you do not want to hit that. That's no fun. So I took a couple of years off. I went and got some counseling done and some therapy done, which was a good space to help me talk through some of my processes and understand what I needed to create space for. And one thing that really helped me in that time was the way that my counselor at the time sort of posed the question of, you know, what is rather than thinking through structures or routines, maybe a better way to think through it is rhythms. And I know that's such a minute difference in language, but I know that was an important one for me because I was like, no, yeah, a rhythm is more in line with how I think as a creative individual, and more in line with something that I feel like serves me. Whereas I often felt like these structures and routines and boxes often just shamed me or made me feel, unable to perform, if you will. So this is really just about setting it up for you to be the most successful. I know it sounds a little like barf in your mouth sometimes, like I was so tired of all of those, like, this is all for you to be successful kind of things. But having now found a few things that work for me, I think it's really about just, you know, like hack the system, find what works for you. So the main things we're going to be going through today, the main idea is about setting up your systems and things to be paying attention to when we'll be moving on to a key within that that's going to be about time blocking and clocking the hours basically, and just how that's worked for me. And then we'll end with sort of looking specifically at the main elements to have in mind for OCAD's current asynchronous approach, which yeah, we'll be open to some fluctuation and flexibility, as you probably are already encountering. But yeah, and if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat box and we'll address them at the end, just because I love questions so much. I'd probably get derailed if I were to address them in the middle. So yeah, let's tackle the main idea, which is setting up your systems. So yeah, just returning to this idea of rhythms. They may be as rigid or flexible as you need them to be. So I guess the main thing to keep in mind about systems is to just think about what are your actual needs, not your theoretical needs, but your actual needs as a living body, number one, and then also as a student and you know, whatever else, what other spheres you may participate in. So the main things, especially for me as a body, I had to really like get in touch with this part of myself, which was sleep and food and breaks. Those were things I really struggled with, actually. So I know many people may relate to that, and just it's an actual area that needs attention. So for sleep, I would say just, you know, figure out how much sleep you need, and no matter when it happens, just do it. You know, like I know there's so much anxiety sometimes surrounding getting things done and meeting deadlines, but for me, I found sleep trumped caffeine and food and all those other things. Like, I needed to sleep. So that's what I found for myself. And then food, there are things, you know, like fruits and vegetables are really good for you. I'll let you know. Turmeric helps you sleep. You know, just get in touch with the things that will help you basically be the best vehicle that you can be. And I will mention the good food boxes as well. If you are in the Greater Toronto area at this time, the good food boxes that the Student Union helps provide and helps you utilize, I would say really, really take advantage of that if you can. It's a really great resource available to you. Moving on to refresh and breaks. This is actually, this is like an important thing, I think. Thinking about breaks sometimes, again, can be a little guilt induced, but I think even if you don't feel like it, it's really good to block out your work hours in order to ensure that you have some no guilt breaks put in there. Those are really just like, even just the brain science behind that. This is where, like, I don't have all of the resources here to offer you, but if you do a quick Google, breaks are so good for your brain, basically. And they're really good to make sure that you're actually more effective at working when you are working than if you're just like slugging along and pounding away at whatever that thing is that you're like feeling guilty about not working enough on. So that's a quick mention on breaks. And work hours, I'm putting that to the side now, sorry, to the front now. That's kind of the main thing I think we all often think of, or it's at least at the forefront of all of our minds, is how do I get in my work hours? Because there's a lot of work to do sometimes. So I will mention time blocking in just a moment, but I just wanted to do a quick mention of certain materials and things that have worked for me. So bullet journaling is a great way. If you are a tactile individual, it's a great way to sort of like get your systems and your thoughts down. I would also say it's really great even just for helping you begin to figure out your systems. I've got my little journal here with some of the attempts that I've made, you know, to bullet journal throughout the last months. I will say that you know, sometimes if it stops serving you, which it did for me at one point, you know, I was doing it for a little while and then I was like, this is taking too much time. I just need to do some stuff and not sit here and write about doing some stuff. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work, but I just wanted to put it out there and say, there's actually a lot of fun ways to bullet journal and lots of cool resources on YouTube. I will say there are endless videos on YouTube for diving into just like the little nitty-gritties of bullet journaling. So that's lots of fun. Whether or not you're an Apple user or not, you often have a notes and a calendar app. That's really, really, I've found that those things really help me when I utilize those things. I used to look down on it a few years ago and be like, oh, like only adults who forget things use those things, but they help you, let me tell you. So take a hold of those resources. And again, with all these things, just like the main thing to keep in mind is setting up your systems in a way that works for your real needs. So if the notes app isn't your favorite, you know, like maybe set up a Word document that has more structure in there if you want more structure, or, you know, there's a kind of a plethora of apps out there to do that sort of stuff also. And I will say sleep, I cannot emphasize sleep enough. Sleep is something that works so well for me in terms of maintaining my systems. I'm a much better human when I sleep. And I will also say exercise is a great endorphin releaser too, especially if you're hitting a low. I know in Corona, especially, we've hit a lot of those lows, and I will say I never thought I had any dance in me, but Corona made me a bit of a YouTube dancer. So if you ever like just need to release those endorphins, you know, just get on, do even just like a 7-minute workout or like a 7-minute little dance segment, whatever actually interests you. I would say just get your body moving, get the blood flowing. It's really, really gonna help you. Cool, so that is the main idea. Some ideas in there about setting up your systems, some things that help. I would invite you to share any systems too, if we have time during the question segment, for things that have helped you, because so much of this is just kind of self-exploratory. It takes time to figure out, you know, like, oh man, like what actually works for me? So I would say like I can only list those things as things that work for me now, but I would say it's been a journey of the last couple years, and I'm still journeying on to figure out, you know, like what really works for me. And the best way that I figured that out was just hearing what worked for other people. And especially as other creatives here too, like I think that's the main thing I want to emphasize. Like we don't work the same way, I would say, like other people work. And maybe you felt the abrasiveness of that in your situation. If you are not constantly surrounded by other creatives, you may feel criticism sometimes, or just like, man, like I just don't work the same way. You know, so if you do have anything that works for you, I would really encourage you either just whacking it in the chat box or bringing it up at the questions at the end, because that is the best way that we can sort of share all those things together. Cool, we are moving right along. We're actually pretty good for time here. So one of the main things that I wanted to talk about, so if there was the main idea, which was structure and setting up your systems to meet your needs, your real needs, then the key, I would say, or like a key within that for me, was time blocking and clocking the hours. And this is specifically for work that you want to produce. And for me, it was also this process of looking to kind of let go of the need to accomplish. And while we definitely are out here looking to accomplish things, right? Like you got to get the project done, you got to get the assignment done, even if it's personally motivated work, you want to get it done, right? But I found that the main thing that I made things more effective for me was actually just time blocking and setting out, you know, a specific set of time to just work. There's a lot of apps out there too. Like there's this particular app that I use called Pomodoro. I think that literally means tomato in Spanish, but basically it's this app that like will give you a little set of time. So like 20 to 25 minute segments, and then like a 5-minute break, then 20-minute segments, and then a 5-minute break. And I found that the most helpful thing for me in terms of actually getting things done was to just like sit down, put the timer on, and just slug away. And whatever is done within those 20 minutes is done, and whatever isn't. Now, of course, there's some flexibility, you know, like if you're on that last night deadline, obviously you're going to be putting in more hours than just, you know, those little blocks. But I found that it really was kind of a bit of a game changer for me. I felt like I often was getting caught up in trying to figure out how to accomplish the task. And then once I was able to just sort of like, while that is a thing that needs to happen, when I was able to just kind of put it to the side and get the timer on, is actually when I would produce the best, which is kind of ironic. Sometimes it's like, yeah, you just got to like put that anxiety to the side and be like, I'm just going to clock the hours. And for some reason, my worry during that, I remember, was thinking, oh, like I'm not going to have enough not enough hours clocked. For some reason, that was my worry. Maybe that's your worry, but just in self-reflection and in self-monitoring, I've come to find that if anything, I feel like I put in more focused minutes doing that system than I would have if I was just kind of sitting scattered at my laptop and attempting to do everything without that. So yeah, so time blocking is really good. And there's a note here that I want to bring up on shame and sort of time monitoring to also encourage self-acceptance. And this was actually a really big thing for me, you know, recovering from my burnout in those first few months when I took time off of school. One of the main things that my counselors actually had me do was create this schedule. And it wasn't to block out my hours so that I might achieve. It was actually just to reflect and to put down how I spent my time and like where the time was going, and to do it with no shame, you know, to just do it and see how I was actually living. And it's so funny because I wouldn't necessarily say that I was like this super accomplisher, but I realized how much shame I had surrounding just my time, or feeling like people were looking at my time and thinking that I wasn't using it well, or, you know, like I'm attempting to sort of get at some things that may be surrounding some of those feelings that we can have. And if this doesn't apply to you, that's great. But this is just a note that I wanted to bring up because it did pertain to my experience, and to just say that sometimes time monitoring in your time blocking is a really interesting way to encourage self-acceptance and see where your needs are, right? So just returning to that understanding of your own needs. It can really help you figure out, you know, like, where am I spending time and where am I taking time for certain things that I don't actually want to take, but it's happening anyway, right? Like that was the thing for me too, was even so returning to this example of sleep. I know it's kind of this, maybe a bit of a funny example, but I've often felt quite guilty about my sleep. But in this time monitoring, before I started time blocking, but in this time monitoring, I started to notice that when I let go of the shame surrounding my sleep, I actually was getting a pretty consistent 8 hours per night. And that's what I needed. And I was like, wow, that's like, oh, that's actually what I need. And if I can put that in and I just know like that's what I need, then I can actually move on and begin to accept that and just know it's one of my needs and be able to work with that in accomplishing in the future. So that's just a quick note on time blocking. You know, clock the hours, just put them in, put like, even if you're pre-planning, and even if you're not pre-planning, right? Sometimes just sitting down and hitting that timer, just get the time in and you'll get some work done. And time monitoring is a really great way to sort of facilitate and encourage self-acceptance of those needs and rhythms that you actually have. So that's just, yeah, that's that note on time blocking. So yep, now, good, we're actually keeping a really good schedule here. To sort of, the next section is just going to be talking about the main elements to have in mind for OCAD's asynchronous approach currently. So with all what I just said in mind, that can apply to everything, you know, really, it's not OCAD specific. And now the things coming up are kind of what I've observed. I did some summer courses the last couple months, and now here we are into week 3-ish of classes. Is it week 3? Yeah, it's week 3. But I've broken it down kind of into the main areas that you need to pay attention to. And as Mia and I were discussing before we got rolling with this, it is a little difficult. Like, you kind of do have to stay on your toes, essentially, because many instructors are kind of doing different things for every class. But I would say that all of these elements that I'm going to mention are always a part of your class. And it's just about paying attention to how your particular instructor facilitates these things. So let's see, yeah, so we've got lecture content, we've got engagement or discussion posts, We've got readings, if that applies to your class, which usually it does. I've yet to find even a studio class that doesn't have a little bit of reading, potentially. And writing, if that applies also to your class, and basically projects and assignments. So yeah, previously, I know I was definitely faced when I was doing my summer classes. I was like, wow, you know, before I would just show up to class. I knew I was in there for 3 hours, not 30 minutes, 3 hours, and I would finish that up. And then whatever my responsibilities were outside of that class time, they were often limited to readings and assignments. There's a whole lot more work right now, unfortunately, in online learning that goes into the things that we kind of just did without thinking too much about them. So things like class engagement, and then even just things like organization. Just the whole online organizational thing takes up a lot of brain space. And I do want to acknowledge that and say, while it's frustrating, I know I was quite frustrated by that initially, it's just good to recognize and say, okay, so I should probably block out a little bit of time to just sit and like go through, you know, the course content, even though, you know, there's something in you that might be like, oh, like I shouldn't have to do this, right? Sometimes we have those things of like, oh, I shouldn't have to do this, but it's just the reality of where we are right now in this time. So I do want to acknowledge like organizational structures and time of just like taking the time to work out how your class runs is valid time that needs to be considered when you're looking at each class. Lecture content, I will say a quick note on this. I've been noticing that some instructors deliver this via video, pre-recorded video. Some do it via text blocks. Yeah, and I will say a lot of the instructors, like I've now interacted with a few of them, I'd say are quite flexible and accommodating if any of those methods don't particularly work for you. So I would say don't be afraid to reach out to your instructors if, for instance, you know, like pages of text are really difficult for you to navigate. But thankfully, I mean, this is about each person's experience. Thankfully, I think most of the instructors I've encountered have been steering away from that. So that's nice. But yeah, so for lecture content itself, you want to make sure you dedicate a certain amount of time to ensuring that you go through it. So whether it is text-based, whether it's pre-recorded video, whether it's a synchronous meeting that you will attend synchronously, which is happening more now in this fall, or that, which often those things are recorded. So whether you attend it synchronously or asynchronously in watching it once it's been recorded, just make sure you block out that time and to ensure that you stay on track. Because I would say lecture content is the main thing that you don't want to miss. I mean, with all these things, you don't want to miss them, but that's, I found often where like the main stuff is going down in your course. One thing I want to mention too about, so discussion and engagement. Many classes right now are using discussion boards or discussion posts. Instructors I've also had personally this term are trying to create different, you know, pods of discussion on Microsoft Teams. So this is, yeah, replacing in-class discussion and participation that would previously, you probably wouldn't think about too much because it would just happen during class time. And I don't know about you, but I actually found this particular area to be the most difficult to adjust to because it's time that I must take into account and put into my schedule to make sure that I actually do it. And it was another one of those things that in my mind I was like, I shouldn't have to do this. But the reality is we do have to do this, in that there is time that we need to give to engage with the rest of the course. So we have lecture content, we have course engagement, which may be via discussion posts or maybe not. And then we've got readings. I will give you the best key that I ever received for readings, which is basically just first sentence and last sentence of every paragraph. Depending on how many readings you have for a particular course. Sometimes, I mean, I would never encourage you to not fully read through something, but if you are trying to pump it out. I would say the best thing that ever helped me was just read the first sentence and last sentence of every paragraph. That basically gives you a really good holistic idea for what your particular reading is talking about. And if you do ever need to go back and sort of flesh an idea out and figure it out more, you can do that and you know where it is. So the way I approach readings is first sentence and last sentence of every paragraph. Take some notes if that helps you. Mark it up and print it out if that helps you. Highlight it on your iPad if that helps you. Whatever helps you, just explore again your systems, see what works best for you, and go from there. But yeah, first sentence and last sentence of every paragraph. Best thing that ever helped me and changed my life in the second year of university. For writing, I'm gonna share I'm quoting somebody when I say this. I forget who actually said it, but basically shitty first drafts, right? So like the best way to actually write is to just pump that thing out and you can go back and fix it later. It's kind of a similar idea to time blocking. It's just about like, sit down and do it and go back and you can finish it up later. I will also say that we all know that sometimes schedules are quite tight. So done is better than perfect is another great phrase that actually my dad says that one. So he would probably laugh if I heard him, if he heard me quoting him right now, but done is better than perfect. And I know many of us as creators, especially with personal projects, can get a little hung up on wanting to make sure that the thing that we're making is, the way we want it to be. I won't necessarily say perfect, but the way we want it to be. So that's my quick note on writing. And then similar with projects and assignments, I was gonna say, thankfully, I feel like that's the one part where like we can take comfort in that. That's the one thing that mostly hasn't changed, unless your particular use of the studios at school has unfortunately been limited. I feel like we're all familiar with making things and creating things, and that doesn't really shift. Like whether or not our medium shifts or whether or not the tools we use have shifted, I think that is where we can take comfort and be like, I still know how to make stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this is why I'm here. I'm here to make some stuff. So that's the one, I guess that's the one thing I know I've been holding on to. I'm like, I'm just here to make things, So in spite of all this stuff, that is the main thing that I would say, thankfully, hasn't shifted too much. Like obviously the hows of how that go about have shifted a bit depending on, what major you are or what particular medium you use. But yeah, creating doesn't stop being creating, thankfully. So that's just a quick summary on some of the things to keep in mind with OCAD's particular system right now, so I'll just name those things off again, which is basically lecture content, discussion and engagement, readings, writing, and then projects and assignments. And I will put a quick note in there again of just taking time to get to know your particular instructor's system is also really important and something to consider. It'll help you be less frustrated throughout the rest of the term. And yeah, oh man, we're doing really good for time. The last thing I want to leave you with is just this note on de-stressing. Basically, one of the last things that I received during my counseling that was also really helpful. There are so many, cannot recommend counseling, by the way, enough. If that is something that you want to take advantage of through OCAD's resources, like do it, even if you don't think that you're doing that badly. I would say it's just really helpful to speak with somebody and just like figure life out. But I just want to give a quick note on de-stressing, which is basically just like, she talked about eliminating the pending box. So we often have this little box in our minds of the things that we have to do, or the tasks that need our attention. And whatever you can do to eliminate any of the things within that box is going to massively help you in your brain space, in stewarding your energy, in allocating your energy too. So that does sound like a little bit theoretical, and I would say a nice way to make that not theoretical is something called the Eisenhower box. I would recommend, unfortunately, for some reason, I'm still having trouble sharing my screen here. But this was the main thing I wanted to show you. But basically, if you just Google the Eisenhower box, I'll put this in the chat. There's this box that will have like these two columns on two sides of urgent and not urgent, and important and not important. You know, so if it's urgent and important, that means you should probably do this task. If it's not urgent and important, then you can decide, you know, when you're gonna do that, but it's not at the top of your list. If it is urgent and not important, then you can, if you can delegate that task, that is a great thing to do. And then, you know, if it's not important and not urgent, then get rid of that thing. And that's, yeah, so I'll put that in the chat box. That's called the Eisenhower box. That was something that helped me just in thinking through how to approach, you know, stewarding my energy and actually de-stressing. Everything here, and what the counselor sort of shared with me is like, part of it is your brain too, and how your brain works. Whatever you can do to eliminate that task list that is in your mind is scientifically better for you. So whatever you can do there, yeah, just help yourself out. That helps printing out the little Eisenhower box and like sticking it in front of your desk. I'm actually probably about to do that myself, just because it's a good visual reminder. But yeah, that's just a quick note on de-stressing, because throughout all of this, you know, you want to try and limit stress as much as you can. And there are active ways that you can, sort of active ways and particular things that you can do to eliminate stress or cope with stress. You don't have to be so, when people say don't stress, I know that's sometimes an unhelpful thing to hear, you know, like, don't stress about it. I'm like, well, thank you. I don't want to stress, but there are practical ways in which you can break down your tasks and sort of assess your rhythms and your systems and figure out how you can take that stress down, because there are practical ways to do that. So that basically wraps it up. Yeah, I'm gonna just open it up for questions now. Anything to do with setting up your systems. And I will say also, again, if you have any systems that you want to share that work for you, you know, I shared bullet journaling and time blocking. Maybe you found other things. I feel like that would be a great thing to share with one another if you want to do that. Even favorite recipes. I don't know, like that's something that like if you cook to de-stress or whatever, I just would love to open up the floor to sort of talk about those things. And then of course, if there are any questions in regards to any of OCAD stuff that I've covered and time blocking, yeah, I'll just open up the floor now for that too, if anybody has those.
Sure. I mean, something that I think that could be helpful, here, I'll turn on my video too there. That was great. Thank you. I noticed you talked about and alluded to imposter syndrome a little bit, like being really hard on yourself. And I think that happens to everybody, not especially artists. I don't mean to say especially artists, but like it's something that I've noticed a lot of artists tend to do. Even when you're mindful of it, it's something that can still kind of seep. Like I'm very aware of it and I try to get past it, but then, you know, it comes back. How do you deal with it in that sort of second version of it?
Woo, that is a good question. Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess it just comes down to your values, probably. I mean, like, man, that's a really great question, actually, because I feel like you, like, as you said, it comes back. So I think there's a constant reassessment in that of like, whoa, and then you kind of try and get your footing again. But at least for me, I think the way that I deal with that is just like having my, like knowing who I am and knowing what I'm doing. And if I'm actually comfortable in that, because actually I think imposter syndrome can present a really good opportunity to reassess sometimes too, and just be like, oh, like, is what I'm participating in or like taking value from or identity from actually like what I want to participate in? And I know like sometimes I actually had those moments and I was like, oh, like actually no. Like for a few things I realized I was like, oh, I don't want to like participate in this way, or at least negotiate, or I want to negotiate it into a slightly different manner. And like, as you said, artists don't, it's not like only artists who deal with this, but I do feel like to talk us up for like a second, I feel like artists have a really good handle on being able to like create new systems and ways of seeing things that maybe others don't like go there as quickly as we do. So I feel like that's where we can kind of be like, you know what, like I'm gonna do something different. Or just like if it is something that you're like, this is what I'm about, then I guess I just kind of take comfort in that and go like, no, like this is what I'm doing. And I'm about, like this is what I'm about. But yeah, like what a question. I feel like it's like one of those questions that's like, that is the question.
That is
that is the question. So yeah.
Yeah, that was
Did
great.
that kind of answer it?
Yeah. I think it's just one of those things where it's gonna happen, and I think how I get out of it is, I think, why am I feeling this way? And then I think, what are my supports? And I just sort of immerse myself in I have 3 pets, so I immerse myself in being with my pets and my wife and draw something. And yeah, I feel like that's what I try to do.
That's actually a really good note. Yeah, supports are, I didn't talk about that, but they're really invaluable too. It's really good to know like where your supports are, and just to like take comfort in those too, like, and just acknowledge that need and be like, I'm gonna do that, which sometimes that also feels a little weird. I feel like we can all be kind of independent sometimes and be like, oh, like I got this, but yeah, we can definitely, my dog's a great support too. Love my dog. So
I think, acknowledging that no one can do anything like alone, whether or not we're aware of it, it takes a team to do anything, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was a good question.
Yeah. Oh, I have a recipe too. I've been vegan or vegetarian for a long time, and one of my favorite go-tos is you make tofu, and you turn you pan fry it, and you turn it up not all the way high, but medium high, and it's with nutritional yeast, mustard, and a little bit of garlic. It kind of has like a rich, cheesy sort of flavor to it. Anyways, and it gets you B12, which is hard for vegans to get. So that's my little favorite. It's quick too. It takes like 8 minutes.
Quick is what I'm always out here looking for. So that is, man, that's good. I'm gonna use that one.
Cool.
Like Mia said, sounds delicious. It does sound really good. What do you like serve that with?
I just have it on a sandwich. I think it goes with any meal, so I think that's why I do it like a lot. I've had it with pasta. I've had it with burgers. I've had it with on its own. It makes a great salad topper too.
Yeah.
We actually had a question from Kaylee. Any advice on avoiding procrastination? That's another big question.
That's a really great question. I'm gonna go back to the time blocking thing. For me, I've found like that's honestly the only way that I actually get stuff done before it's like the last minute. and also just kind of working a task backwards too, I would say. If it's a particularly big task or a big project, I know that like I have a tendency to procrastinate on those more just because I'm afraid of breaking it down. So I would say break it down and then work backwards, figure out how much time you think you need. I keep realizing that I'm not as productive as I think I am, and so I always need more time than I give myself. So that's kind of why I've just started doing, like I'm just gonna time block it. There's actually a really great app out there. Well, great / you're gonna have mixed feelings about it, but it's called Self-Control. And basically you can blacklist all of these sites and stuff on it and like set a timer. And once you hit it, there's no going back. So if you like that kind of thing, I don't actually really like that kind of thing. So I tried doing that, and then I would get frustrated because I would need to go to YouTube to get like this one little thing, or like Google for this one little thing. But that is actually a resource that I've tried, and worth mentioning if that's something that would help you. Yeah.
Cool. That was a great answer.
I think we've got something from Sabrina here. Sabrina, would you want to share ways that you motivate yourself and fight procrastination too?
Yeah, so one of the ways that I like to fight my procrastination is by first making a list of what I really need to get done first. And then once I have that, I think of a positive thing that I could do once I finish that. So the sooner that I finish this task, I get to, well, for me, it's baking or, going outside or something like that. So that's something I found is really helpful for me to actually get going as early as possible so that I have the rest of the day to do something positive or fun. Yeah.
That's so good. That's like right in line with my dad's a really big kind of like hack your body nerd. So that's actually within the things that he has often shared with me and my siblings is if you give yourself a reward at the end, you're literally like making your brain, like you're wiring your brain to want to accomplish your tasks more, which I never quite believed until I started doing it a little bit more. And I was like, you're right. So that's actually a really good note is you're basically like working with your brain and rewarding your brain too when you do that. So that's really good.
Mm-hmm. And we had another comment from Mia talking about loving the turmeric tidbit, and they personally love tea to distress. I also think that's a great, I drink too much coffee, so sometimes even drinking tea with caffeine, I feel a little bit less jittery, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I'm definitely a caffeine person. I was on my first couple years at university, I was like 5 to 6 cups of coffee a day. And now I can happily say I'm down to like 1 to 2, and then it'll be like maybe a tea. But yeah, I feel that. One thing that nobody ever told me, this is one thing that I wish somebody told me, like with, looking ahead to all-nighters, because sometimes you do have to pull those, is just how good water is. I know it sounds like so basic, but like I'd pull an all-nighter, sleep for 45 minutes, get up, and then like just down gallons of water. And I would feel a million times better doing that than like chugging caffeine after that. So I know that's like, I don't encourage doing all-nighters, but like also like if you got to do it, there are better ways to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Water's key. Like water, it sounds so silly. It's this basic thing that everyone overlooks. It's the access you have to it that you don't think about, but like staying hydrated is like, it's good for your skin. You feel better. You're less like jittery from the caffeine.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we've got some comments here about chocolate. Yeah, chocolate helps with the moodiness associated with stress. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
The brain
does sit in water. Yeah, that's a good point, Kaylee.
Yeah. And I feel like all this stuff sounds so basic. If anything, I was kind of hesitant to like even make it a workshop because I'm like, it's a workshop on basic, but it's like it's so basic it's overlooked sometimes. And I think that's why I've been like starting to get excited about this stuff because I'm like, okay, yeah, like this could be the difference between being happy and healthy within your creative lifestyle or not. And that's a really big deal.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really important point that you made, actually, and it kind of goes into that imposter syndrome that you were talking about, that even you who did a great job running this workshop, you can kind of feel about this sort of thing. And because the world's so complicated, we forget about the simple things because we're so focused on all these things flying in the air. So yeah, I think going back to basics is very nice.
Yeah. All-nighters. Let me see what Mia wrote here. Yeah, important to pay attention to our body. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Skincare is always overlooked as well.
Yes. It's a fun thing to nerd out on if you ever want to watch, like, I've been watching Hiram's videos on YouTube. I don't know if anybody knows who that is, but that's always a fun little side segue segment into bodily health of just, what do I need to do for my skin? It's a fun little side quest.
Cool. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Oh, cool. Yeah, it sounds like we have people in the chat that are interested in cosmetic chemistry. Yeah. Do we have any other questions for Kinzi from the participants in the chat? Also, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question if you'd like. We just have a couple more minutes. Alrighty, I'm not seeing any. So with that being said, did you have anything left to say, Kinzi?
No, I think that's basically it. I just wish everyone the best you know, in all of this navigating life, attempting to be good and healthy. And yeah, just want to reiterate those resources that the Student Union does provide, because there are some really excellent resources there, just with the food boxes and access to counseling and all that sort of stuff. Those are things to really take advantage of, especially while you're a student. So go and do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say keep a keen eye on our Instagram. We're always posting stuff. There are resources that Kinzi was kind enough to mention, like the food box, and we also have different amounts of funding available for students and resources during this time, and this workshop series that's going to be going on once a month for the duration of this semester. And CSD can help for anxiety accommodations. So that's just like a pretty good resource as well. I would recommend students check out all your options at the school for sure. And the Writing and Learning Center. That's a very good point as well. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Kinzi, for running a great workshop. You did amazing. I am going to stop recording now.
Cool.